name is Cameron Kane with a company called ClickMail Marketing. We've been a value-added reseller, platinum-tiered ExactTarget value-added reseller for approximately since 2009. Been building relatively advanced email solutions for about the last 10 years. And the solution we'll go over today is about a client of ours, being a Bloomberg, Bureau of National Affairs. They're the leading source of legal, regulatory, and business information for professionals. Those professionals include attorneys, accountants, government officials, lobbyists, policymakers, elected government officials, etc. And they have approximately 100 paid newsletter subscriptions that they sell to their client base. The business challenge we're presented with is they wanted to leverage a top-tier ESP as an integral part of the B&A publication system. They wanted a solution that would easily scale as they bring additional email products to market. They wanted a solution that was 100% automated, so once it leaves their system, it's sort of set it and forget it. And last, they wanted a highly customized email spanning over 100 email publications. So they were going to leverage the same code or template inside ExactTarget with in-product personalization for selection of user-relevant content. Lots of words. An example of this, a member can select items within the particular publication that are most interested in, and any future publications that match that criteria will float to the top of the newsletter. So depending on which email they're interested in and their self-selections, they're going to receive different content in the top of that email. This is an example of their email. Like I said, it's one template or one email utilizing the same exact code block inside ExactTarget. Diving a little bit deeper into the email, you can see on the right-hand side the large arrows indicate large sections or categories of content that can be changed. You have the My Headline section, sort of the top arrow, the large arrow there, the other headlines, highlights, insights. So lots of different content, lots of different sections can display, cannot display, can be sorted based upon what information is available in a data extension or not available in a data extension. And then once you drill into those different areas, so the other headlines or the My Headline section, we built user content criteria matching. So we search every story in the data to see if the user has selected that type of content to display. And if it does, we float it up into the My Headline section. We have preference sorting. So again, for category and sort messages in a very, very specific order. We have smart story allocation. So if a user is interested in a particular type of story, we can pull that out, render it under the My Headline section. If it doesn't hit under a My Headline section, we can render that content out in the other headline section. We have very, very complex sorting criteria from section, category, display slugs. Overriding pole position content, so that's indicating if B&A determines a story has a lot of value, they can float it up to the very top of the newsletter for that specific paid publication, and it'll be the first thing that their client will see. And then lastly, a feature of overriding entire content areas. So if stories are available in the other headlines and they have a flag in the data set that indicates, hey, let's not display my or other headlines to this user, let's display the highlights file instead. There's some interesting information there. All they have to do is plug that flag in their database, and indeed that content would swap out. By the way, this is one newsletter using one code set inside ExactTarget. Relatively amazing. So the project plan, it was looking at the first set of customer criteria. It was very complex. It read like a package insert for medication. Very, very complex. Needed to wrap or head around how we're going to do it. The client also wasn't familiar with ExactTarget, exactly what could happen in ExactTarget, and the customization that's available in that platform. So we executed a proof of concept, and the proof of concept was done in AMPscript using XML. So they transfer a bunch of XML into ExactTarget, and through an XSLT process through AMPscript, we're relatively able to, or easily able to, add very sophisticated proof of concept very quickly, made the client very comfortable with the platform, being able to customize the platform specifically for their solution. The build, so this allowed the client to understand the render, understand how the system worked, and they were able to refine their requirements just a little bit more. So getting this new set of requirements, we realized that it was probably best done in server-side JavaScript. And we scratched our heads, and we wanted AMPscript. If you're familiar with the AMPscript in the email, and if it's going to be processed in an email, it runs very, very quickly. Server-side JavaScript takes a little bit more processing power, so you sort of have to do that balance of how large is my audience, how often is this sending, what kind of processing can I do on the data prior to ExactTarget starting to sort of encapsulate and start the send process. And we decided with the size of the audiences, it would be an appropriate solution. So the solution process broken into 3 steps. The first step is transferring content, and this is per publication. So each publication has 2 files that gets loaded into data extensions. One is a customer file, and the other is the stories file. So via API, it pops on, sends the file to the ExactTarget SFTP, and then an import process is started on that data. And where you see the gray line there, that's an indication of they're going to stop and they're going to check and make sure everything executed properly. If not, they're just going to shut down this entire process. Step 2 pops on. They load a very small snippet of content into a content area. They're going to, again, on the API call, they get positive confirmation that indeed the content made into ExactTarget. And then step 3, they perform the user-initiated message. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with user-initiated message. It sort of binds the email content to the audience with all of the other email attributes. And so you see a basic structure of the email on the right-hand side where you see the core server-side JavaScript logic at the head, and then that's controlling the rest of the sections in the email. So the data structure, as I mentioned, there's 2 files that are pushed into ExactTarget on a daily basis per product. The customer file, so that of course has the customers they're sending to. A little different about this customer file is it contains preference information. So if you have, as a customer, chosen 5 items that you're interested in for a particular publication, you're going to have 5 lines in this customer file. At the very end of those lines, it's going to have something called a term ID, and it's going to just be a single number, and it's going to indicate the category of content that they're interested in. On the other side is the story data extension that contains the titles, display slugs, heading, URL, etc. But at the very end, there's a term list, and it could be 1 number, it could be an array of numbers. And our job, when we start to send this email, is per customer, figure out if they have any term IDs available, and then traverse the story database and make sure and see if we can find a hit on 1 or multiple categories. And if we do, we know that story then is a preference, and we can float it up into the my headline section. As I mentioned, this is executed using server-side JavaScript. We broke the code into 5 basic sections. The first, we do all the data extension lookups, array creation, population. Second, we create more arrays, the actual arrays that ultimately end up rendering in the email. Third, we do the content allocation into those arrays. So we start searching or traversing the arrays, seeing what stories have matching criteria, and then allocating them to the specific array. Fourth, we format the content in the array. So we're dealing with just raw sort of text code. We need to now add HTML embellishments to it. And then lastly, we render that in an email. And we're not rendering it in server-side JavaScript. We end up rendering in AMPscript. There's a feature in AMPscript, treatise content area, that we're able to add link tracking to everything. So even though this is a very, very dynamic email, you still have sort of the feature functionality of link tracking within ExactTarget. We did not leverage templates or the ExactTarget template. We loaded content areas dynamically in server-side JavaScript and AMPscript. The reason we did this, we had a little bit more control over the email, and it processed a little bit faster for us. We did not leverage content syndication, so that area that I mentioned that could be switched out with a new section, An easy solution for that would have been to just implement content syndication, go off at time, grab that piece from the website and render it. But they needed positive confirmation that the file was installed into ExactTarget. Therefore, we inserted the content that way. We parameterized the data extension lookups. So they have 100 products. Next year they can have 200, 500, 1,000. It doesn't matter. Once you do the initial user initiated message to the original customer data extension, it's pulling all the information it needs out of that data, and then it knows which story data extension to look up for its content. As I mentioned, the solution was in server-side JavaScript. However, when we had the data ready for print, we ended up using the AMPscript function treat as content area for link tracking. And lastly, we separated the code from most all of the HTML. If they needed a change in color, a change in brand, very, very simple to do something like that. And on the home stretch here, items to consider if you're going to build a solution like this for yourself or one of your clients. One is to make the determination of if you're going to use server-side JavaScript or AMPscript. They both have pros and cons, and you don't have to exclusively use one or the other. You can have a blend there. Structure the architecture to help with the heavy lifting, so have very thoughtful queries. So if you have queries that need to process the data down, don't have it do it as it's trying to send an email. Put it a step before, or possibly a program even before that, to pre-process any data that needs pre-processing. Smart naming taxonomy, so make sure that, as I mentioned with data extensions, you're in a position you can easily scale, and you don't have to go back and maintain another set of sort of lookup criteria that you don't need to. And lastly, make sure those programs are set up in a very safe fashion. So if you do pop on a step one and it's going to execute a bunch of queries to fill data extensions you could be sending to, make sure if they fail the entire program, so you don't send an email to possibly an incorrect audience. And lastly, if you're going to be leveraging the API, when you're sketching out the solution, and you identify a few API calls, make sure you make those API calls at that point. Don't put them in your solution, sort of, start writing them when you're building the solution. You want to make sure that the methods and objects are available then, and you understand the data return. It's easier to change your solution at that point than going, all the way down the road and realizing you have to sort of make a change in what you've done. I think that's it.